I think escapism is an ostrich way of avoiding things. You've heard the saying, sticking your head in the ground and avoiding problems, and I would say we've all done it. And, Google says escapism is distraction from unpleasant realities. I think nowadays escapism has become more than that, right? The unpleasant realities have taken over the whole life of some people, and it's gone to the point where people are spending their whole lives escaping from life in general. It's now become their life, right? And I don't want to paint escapism in a purely negative light, right? Like avoiding your problems with alcoholism. I think that's a clear-cut example of escapism. We've all, thought of that, right? It's just that's escapism, right? But there's other forms of escapism, right? Like working on your art, like business, or well, not working on your art like a business, but like a painting or a music project you're working on. Like there's different levels of escapism, but it's all perspective, right? You have escapism that is beneficial, that you would say, but then you also have negative escapism, and sometimes people don't enjoy certain aspects of escapism. Like let's say you got a guy who loves working out, and you got a guy who hates working out. One of those guys will, likely be considered that's their escape. They love working out, but another hates it. So escapism is pretty perspective in that way. But the thing is, if you use escapism, it can even help your life. If you that business, gives you a reason, to kind of go forth with life and helps you progress in whatever way you deem progression, then it can be good. But of course, escapism is a double-edged sword, right? It can be really detrimental. I think I know it. But in my eyes, I don't want to give it like totally bad rep. I kind of think escapism has has been beneficial to human advancement in a way, which is kind of crazy to think. But hear me out, right? When the cavemen were at home, in the cave, right, doing his caveman things, they made the advancements for their society on the off times from chasing the mammoth. So, creating art like those cave drawings and discovering stuff like fire, that all came because they had some spare time, right? And they were, just kind of thinking around. The cavemen didn't know much, but they utilized that, escaping the thought of chasing a mammoth. So, I wouldn't say it's totally negative, but there's a balance to it, and I think that's what we got to kind of view with escapism. It's not good or bad. It's just kind of a state, right? Um, but you definitely don't want to overindulge in escapism. Like we've seen examples of addiction in our lives. I know probably everyone has known someone that suffered from an addiction, whether it be a friend, family member, so be it, right? Escapism really takes over people's lives. That is all of their life. It's all they do, right? And escapism can even be kind of absurd at times, in which it's kind of ironic. Like there's this book you might have read, maybe not. Who knows? It's the Petit Prince, right? And I don't want to give the whole synopsis of the book, but he's like this prince. He's like on a journey, blah blah blah, and he visits planets with one person on it. And one of these planets, it's a small planet, it's just him and the prince. He visits a drunk, and the prince is talking with the drunk, and he asks him, "Why are you drinking?" And the drunkard, he replies, "Well, I want to forget, right?" And the prince says, "Okay, well, what are you forgetting?" And the drunkard, he replies, "To forget that I'm ashamed." And then the prince, he's like curious because he's this naive person from outer space. He's like, "What are you ashamed of?" And then the drunk replies, "I'm ashamed of drinking." And while quite humorous and gives you kind of a laugh, it's also kind of saddening when you kind of look at this and say, well, okay, well, a lot of escapism at first is kind of a, you know, a temporary recluse from the things you really don't want to tackle, right? Sometimes you just gotta like, you gotta put on the show to get away from it. And you know, I think we all agree it's like moderation, right? Moderation is fine, even moderation. Who says that? But no. It's absurd that, you know, we escape, and you know, in this case he escapes the feeling that was caused by his escaping. It's all escaping, but it's as if he's a, you know, a guy tending his garden, let's say, and he's got a weed and he cuts it off, you know, and it's a permanent band-aid. He doesn't take out the roots though, and eventually the weed's gonna grow and take over the whole garden, and he's like, how does this happen? And it's the thing with escapism, you can't let it get out of hand. So I don't want to like just be totally like, oh, escapism this, escapism that, there's no solution. I'm gonna try and give my solution, right? Because, you know, that's my thing. I'm gonna try to want to at least provide a solution to the problem. And you know, I don't know everything, but I'm just here to give my 2 cents, right? So one thing I would say is to act like a cynic, right? Now, I don't know what you're thinking right now. Maybe you're thinking what I'm thinking, but maybe not. You're thinking that a cynic is like a cynical type, like when you have a friend that hates doing everything. He's like, oh, I hate this, hate that. You know, that's a cynic, right? In terms of what we know. I'm more talking about a Diogenes type, and I'll refer to PewDiePie because he had a good video just about Diogenes and kind of cynic philosophy in general, and I'll just let it play.
At this same time, I was reading about Diogenes, the ancient Greek philosopher, who only lived with one item in his possession, which was a wooden bowl. Even this he got rid of on the day when he saw a peasant boy drinking water by cupping his hands. He tossed the bowl away and said, "Fool that I am, to have been carrying this superfluous baggage all this time." What was Diogenes' philosophy that even Alexander the Great became so interested in it? Diogenes defined and was considered one of the founders of cynicism. This word doesn't have the same meaning then as today. Cynic meant dog or dog-like, which was likely said to ridicule Diogenes and his strange behaviors. He, however, took this name on himself because he actually praised the dog and its virtues, despite it being used as an insult. A dog lives at ease. They don't think about the past or the future. They live only according to nature, just like Diogenes.
Yeah, so you see, like Diogenes, he completely gives up everything, and he kind of makes it seem like he has all the freedom in the world, and I mean he does, because he's not being held back by anything. Like, you know, with escapism or avoiding our problems, Diogenes, you know, he'd fight his problems head on. And that's kind of the thing with cynic philosophy, right? Is you know, the idea of living in virtue and living according to your nature. Well, okay, what does that even mean, right? And I think what it means, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, I know people know a lot more than me, right? But what I understand it means to live, you know, according to your nature, is to live your life in according to logos. And you're like, okay, what's logos? Again, I might be wrong, but it's kind of like destiny, fate, or what the world has for you. Not in a deterministic sense of fate where everything's decided for you, but you're kind of your path in life. Sounds so cheesy, but what you're meant to do. And I think we all know that you have some sort of value that you can add. Maybe not, but that's the cynic idea, right? To live according to your nature. And in PewDiePie's video, he brings up this one thing. He doesn't bring it, he just says it. You know, when talking about Diogenes and cynic and the dog, right? A dog lives at ease. They do not think about the past or the future. They live according to nature. And of course, he says just like Diogenes, because Diogenes, of course, is a cynic, right? And that's all cynic philosophy, living according to nature. But maybe you don't like cynic philosophy. I mean, there's another great PewDiePie video. I'll just link it, right? It's his tutorial on how to be happy, in which talks about Stoic philosophy, which holds a lot of its root in cynicism. But again, maybe you don't like that, and you don't vibe with that. You don't vibe with that. No. Yeah. That's just my thought. Cynic philosophy can help you kind of free yourself. And eventually you'll have to face your problems head on. So yeah, that's just escapism. Don't escape too hard, right? Go touch some grass, which does have some merit. I might do a video on that whole philosophy itself of touching grass and where that's rooted in. But no, yeah, try to give yourself the positive aspects of escapism, and don't escape too hard. Thanks. Let me know. Do you think escapism is good? Is escapism purely negative? Is there a mesh in between? Where do you think the line is drawn with escapism? Do you think it's purely negative? Is it just kind of a neutral thing? Let me know, and tell me what you thought. Thanks.